Everyone in the hall expected the single dad to break. Instead, when the billionaire CEO mocked him, "Fix this engine and I'll marry you," he simply wiped the grease from his hands and said, "Deal." That was the moment the entire room realized they had underestimated the wrong man. Seraphina Vance wasn't just the CEO of Vance Innovations. She was its architect. She'd inherited a respectable company from her dad, but she was the one who forged it into a global leader through sheer, ruthless brilliance. She lived in a penthouse that scraped the clouds, a sterile glass box that was a perfect mirror for her heart. To the world, she was a titan. To herself, in the lonely hours after the markets closed, she was a fortress built to keep everyone out. A nasty betrayal in her past had taught her that vulnerability was a liability. So power became her shield and cruelty her sword. People were either assets or obstacles, and Liam O'Connell, who dared to suggest her top engineers were overlooking the quantum resonance cascade, was an obstacle she needed to flatten publicly. Liam O'Connell, on the other hand, measured his wealth in bedtime stories and scraped knees. At 35, he was a widower and a devoted dad to his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. His world wasn't boardrooms. It was school runs, packed lunches, and the dim glow of a nightlight. See, 5 years ago, he was William Carter, a name whispered with respect in the halls of Sterling Automotive. He was their chief propulsion engineer, a rising star. But when his wife, Elena, got sick, he walked away from it all without a second thought. The corner office, the 6-figure salary, the awards, they meant nothing compared to the time he had left with her. After she passed, he took a simple maintenance job at Vance Innovations. The pay was a fraction of his old salary, but the hours were stable. It meant he could be there for Lily, to fix her breakfast, braid her hair, and tuck her in at night. He was a man who had already given up everything for love, a quiet king in a tiny, beautiful kingdom of two. The Odyssey Core was Seraphina's masterpiece, an engine that promised to make interstellar travel a reality. It was also a massive failure. For 6 months, her elite team of engineers had been completely stumped. The engine would power on, hum with potential, and then, without warning, it would fail. It was during one of these failed tests, while he was cleaning a vent nearby, that Liam overheard their frantic arguments. He saw the flaw immediately, a basic miscalculation in the plasma containment field. He tried to tell a junior engineer, quietly and respectfully. That engineer, trying to score points, told his boss, and the boss, insulted that a janitor would dare question him, reported it to Seraphina. That's when she decided to make an example of him. In the silence after her mocking proposal, Seraphina expected him to shrink, to stammer, apologize, and scurry away. But Liam O'Connell didn't do any of those things. He just met her gaze, his eyes a calm gray sea against her stormy blue. He took a slow breath, his broad shoulders squaring up just slightly. "Deal," he said. The word was quiet, but it landed with the force of a thunderclap. A nervous laugh went through the crowd. Seraphina's smirk faltered for just a second. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected fear, not acceptance. With a wave of her hand, she gestured to the dead engine, a silent dare. "Be my guest." Liam didn't rush. He walked over to a tool cart, his movements deliberate. And what did he do? He walked right past all the fancy diagnostic tablets and holographic displays. Instead, he picked up a simple wrench, a multimeter, and a worn-out notebook he pulled from his back pocket. He didn't approach the Odyssey Core like a mechanic. He approached it like a surgeon. He didn't just look at the engine. He listened to it, tilting his head, his hand resting gently on its cold metal skin, as if he were feeling for a pulse. He ignored the schematics on the massive screen and opened his notebook. The pages were filled with dense, elegant handwriting and equations that made Seraphina's breath catch. They were more advanced than anything her own team had come up with. For the next hour, the hall became a silent theater of pure competence. Just the rhythmic click of a wrench, the soft scratch of a pen, and the low hum of the multimeter. Liam worked with a focused grace that was mesmerizing. He wasn't just tightening bolts. He was correcting a flawed philosophy, muttering things only a handful of people on the planet would understand, like asynchronous decay. They forgot to account for temporal shear. Seraphina couldn't look away. As a trained engineer herself, she recognized the level of genius at work. This wasn't a janitor. This was a master, a poet composing a symphony of physics. He moved to a whiteboard, erased a string of her lead engineer's equations, and replaced them with a new set, his hand moving with fluid certainty. Then she saw it. As he leaned over the core, the cuff of his uniform rode up, revealing a tattoo on his forearm, a small, stylized phoenix encircling a gear. It was the emblem of the Phoenix Project from Sterling Automotive, a legendary, almost mythical R&D group. Her company had been trying to poach their members for years, with zero success. They were ghosts, geniuses who were notoriously anonymous. Her whole worldview started to shift. This man, this greasy, exhausted single dad she'd tried to humiliate, he was one of them. With a final satisfying click, Liam stepped back. He wiped his hands on a rag, looked at Seraphina, and nodded. "Turn it on." Her hand trembled a little as she typed the command. A low hum began to fill the room, growing steadily, smoothly, with no shudder of instability. It climbed past the previous failure point, then past the theoretical maximum her team had dreamed of. The Odyssey Core glowed with a pure, stable, brilliant blue light. The room erupted in gasps, then stunned applause. Liam hadn't only fixed the engine, he had made it better, he had done the impossible, and in doing so, he had silently won her mocking bet. The days that followed were a blur. The successful test of the Odyssey Core sent shockwaves through the industry, and Seraphina was flooded with calls. She should have been on top of the world, but instead, a strange, unsettling feeling had taken root. In every meeting, she just saw Liam's calm, dignified face. She saw the Phoenix tattoo. She heard his quiet, confident voice say, "Deal." The shame was a cold knot in her stomach. She had built her empire on acquiring the best assets, and she had just publicly mocked the most brilliant mind she'd ever met. So, she did something she hadn't done in years. She went looking for someone, not for a transaction, but for an explanation. She found him in a small, sunlit park near campus, sharing a sandwich with a little girl who had his same calm gray eyes. His daughter, Lily. Seraphina watched from a distance, her power suit feeling completely ridiculous. She saw a side of him that was totally alien to her world of corporate warfare. He listened intently as Lily described her day, and he laughed, a real, unburdened laugh, as his daughter put a daisy in his hair. This wasn't some misunderstood genius. This was just a dad, a good one, and the sight stirred something in her, a hollow ache for a life she'd never lived. She gathered her courage and approached. "Mr. O'Connell." Liam looked up, his expression impossible to read. Lily hid behind his leg. "Ms. Vance," he said, his tone neutral. I wanted to apologize," Seraphina began, the words feeling clumsy in her mouth. "My behavior was unacceptable. What you did, it was extraordinary." "I was just doing a job," he said, not letting her off the hook. It was such a simple, profound statement. It completely disarmed her. She looked at Lily. "She's beautiful." "She's my whole world," Liam said, his hand resting on his daughter's head. In that moment, Seraphina Vance, the woman who commanded boardrooms, felt poor. She had everything, and she had nothing. Liam, the man she'd mocked, had lost so much, yet he had a richness she couldn't begin to understand. She offered him a job on the spot, head of the Odyssey project, a life-changing salary, his own lab, anything. He politely refused. "My life is good, Ms. Vance," he explained, his gaze steady. "My job gives me time for what matters." He motioned to Lily, who was now chasing a butterfly. "I'm not that man anymore. I'm not looking for a corner office." His refusal hit her harder than any negotiation tactic she'd ever faced. He didn't want her money. He didn't want her power. It was a quiet rejection of everything she stood for, and it made him the most fascinating person she'd ever met. She started making excuses to visit the lower levels, hoping for another 5-minute conversation that felt more real than any board meeting. She learned about his late wife, his passion for fixing things, and the quiet acts of kindness he performed for other employees. The more she learned, the more the ice around her heart began to crack. Seraphina's change didn't go unnoticed. Marcus Thorne, a slick board member who wanted her job, saw her new interest in a grease monkey as the perfect weapon. He started whispering to other board members about her erratic behavior and compromised judgment. The whispers turned into a full-blown attack when Marcus leaked edited security photos to the media. The photos showed Seraphina and Liam talking in the park, laughing near a service elevator. The headline was pure poison. "Billionaire CEO's secret affair with factory floor worker. Is Vance Innovations' future at risk?" The story exploded. The company's stock took a nosedive. The board called an emergency meeting. Seraphina walked into a firing squad of stony-faced executives, with Marcus at the head of the table, looking like a vulture ready for the kill. "Seraphina, this is a disaster," one of them began. "You must distance yourself from this man immediately. Fire him. Make a public statement." Marcus smirked. "It's a question of judgment. How can we trust you when you're fraternizing with the help?" Now the old Seraphina would have been merciless. She would have cut Liam loose in a heartbeat to protect the company and herself. She would have crushed Marcus and the media for daring to challenge her. But as she stood there, looking at their cold, accusatory faces, she didn't feel anger. She felt disappointed. They were blinded by the same prejudice that had once blinded her. "No," she said, her voice quiet but firm. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry?" "I said no," she repeated, her voice gaining strength. "I will not fire him, and I will not dignify your pathetic accusations. Mr. O'Connell has more integrity and brilliance than anyone in this room." She looked right at Marcus. "You want to talk about judgment? My greatest error in judgment was not seeing the genius right under my own roof. A genius who solved a problem this board's million-a-year engineers couldn't crack. A problem he solved in 1 hour after I publicly humiliated him." The room was silent. "This meeting," Seraphina concluded, her voice like ice, "is about your lack of vision, not my personal life. We are moving forward with the Odyssey project, and I will be personally consulting with Mr. O'Connell on every phase. If anyone has a problem with that, your resignation letters are welcome on my desk by morning." She turned and walked out, leaving a room full of stunned executives. She had drawn her line in the sand. She had chosen a person over profits. She had defended the humble single dad, and in doing so, she had started to defend the person she wanted to become. The press conference for the Odyssey Core's official unveiling was the biggest event in the company's history. The hall was packed. The atmosphere was electric. This was Seraphina's moment of ultimate triumph. The engine powered on with its signature, perfect hum. Seraphina stood at the podium, poised and in command. She had just started her speech when a frantic alarm blared through the hall. Red lights flashed. On the giant screen behind her, the core's energy signature began to fluctuate wildly. Chaos. Her engineers, in a control booth, were shouting into their headsets, their faces pale. The core was destabilizing, and this time, it was far more violent. It was a runaway chain reaction. "What's happening?" Seraphina demanded into her earpiece. "I don't know," her lead engineer shrieked. "The override commands aren't responding. It's been sabotaged." In the middle of the chaos, her eyes scanned the crowd and found him. Liam. He was standing near the back, having come to offer quiet support. While everyone else was running away, he was standing still, his eyes locked on the core, his mind already working. Their eyes met. In that split second, she made a choice. She threw protocol, pride, and public perception out the window. "Liam!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the alarms. The entire hall turned to her. She pointed to the stage. "I need you." It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Without a word, Liam vaulted a security railing and sprinted towards the stage, shrugging off his jacket as he ran. "The external plasma injectors have been deliberately misaligned," he yelled over the alarm as he reached the control panel. "It's flooding the containment field." Her team was frozen, but Liam was a whirlwind of controlled action. "Get me manual access to the coolant system, now!" he commanded one of the terrified engineers. Seraphina was right beside him. "What do you need?" "I have to manually vent the plasma pressure, but it'll cause a full system blowout if we can't flush the core with coolant at the same time. You have to override the security lockout on my mark." Exactly on my mark. It was a maneuver that required perfect timing and absolute trust. A split second off, and the engine would either explode or melt down. They worked together, a seamless dance of two brilliant minds. He called out technical jargon, and she responded instantly, her fingers flying across her console. The crowd watched, breathless, as the CEO and the mechanic fought to tame the mechanical beast. "Now, Seraphina, now!" Liam roared. She slammed her hand down on the enter key. For a terrifying second, the engine screamed. Then, with a massive hiss of venting gas, the alarms fell silent. The angry red glow faded back to its stable, brilliant blue. Silence. Then, the hall erupted into thunderous applause. They weren't just clapping for the saved prototype, they were clapping for the two people on stage, covered in coolant spray, breathing heavily, a team who had stared down disaster and won. A security review would later find footage of Marcus Thorne slipping a virus into the system. His ruin was swift and total. But in that moment, standing on stage next to Liam, Seraphina knew none of that. All she knew was that when her world was literally falling apart, the only person she trusted to help save it was the single dad she had once mocked. He hadn't just fixed her engine. He had, in front of the entire world, saved her company. In the quiet aftermath, the world realigned. Suddenly, Liam wasn't the anonymous maintenance guy anymore. The media hailed him as the engine whisperer, a hero who had stopped a billion-dollar catastrophe. Offers poured in from every major tech company on the planet. He politely declined them all. Instead, he accepted one offer. Seraphina hadn't offered him a title or a salary. She had just walked into his small workshop and said, "I don't want to hire an employee. I need a partner. Help me build things that are honest." He agreed, but on one condition. The company had to build a state-of-the-art daycare and family center on campus, free for all employees. Seraphina agreed without a moment's hesitation. Their partnership quickly and naturally turned into something more. Their late nights redesigning the core were filled with shared stories, quiet laughter, and a respect that slowly bloomed into affection. He introduced her to his world of school plays and messy kitchens, and to a 7-year-old girl who decided Seraphina was her new best friend. Seraphina, in turn, started tearing down her own walls, showing him the vulnerable, passionate woman behind the CEO mask. Months later, they were standing in her penthouse, looking out over the glittering city. It wasn't a sterile glass box anymore. A child's drawing was taped to the fridge, and a Lego castle sat on the coffee table. Liam was showing her a new design on a tablet. He was so lost in his explanation that he didn't see her looking at him, her face filled with a warmth that would have been unrecognizable a year ago. She gently took the tablet from his hands and set it aside. She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Liam," she whispered. "Yeah?" She smiled, a genuine, mischievous smile that lit up her entire face. "About that marriage proposal. Was that a legally binding contract?" He laughed, a deep, happy sound that filled the room. He pulled her closer, his calloused hands, the hands that could build and fix and heal, holding her gently. "I believe the terms were that I had to fix the engine," he said, his eyes twinkling. "But I think we fixed a lot more than that." The challenge thrown out as a cruel joke had become their origin story. He had fixed her engine, yes. But in doing so, he had fixed something inside her she hadn't even known was broken. And she, in turn, had given him and his daughter a future they had stopped dreaming of. They had found a spark that had turned into a brilliant, steady flame. The story of Seraphina and Liam isn't just about a broken engine. It's a story about broken perspectives. It shows us that true genius can be found in the most unexpected places, and that real strength lies in having the courage to tear down our own walls. It's a powerful reminder that humility, respect, and kindness are the tools that can fix almost anything. What did you think of their story? Let us know your favorite moment in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and share this video if you believe in second chances and the power of unexpected love. Thanks for watching.